And with the campaign in its ninth day, we're now joined by Liberal strategist Andrew Perez. Andrew, thanks for being back with us.
Great to be here.
Now, last week, the Liberals were up 6 points. We've seen a bit of a narrowing over the weekend, anywhere between 2 points and 4 points up for the Liberals. Is this a sign that support may be swinging back to the Conservatives?
I don't think so, Theresa. This was always going to be a relatively close race, but what we've seen in the first week is the Liberals clearly out in front. The CBC poll tracker, which is an aggregate of all the public opinion polls currently out in the field, currently shows the Liberals with a 4.5 lead over the Conservative Party and very likely to form a majority government. Now, we're just over 1 week into this 5 week campaign. The dynamic could change, but at this point in time, the Liberal Party is comfortably ahead in most polling.
And what's your take on Prime Minister Carney's call with President Trump, given that Trump appeared to speak rather highly of him?
Yeah, I think no doubt that that was a successful first telephone meeting between President Trump and Prime Minister Mark Carney. At the end of the day, in the last month, we have heard President Trump double down on referring to Canada as a 51st state, referring to Governor Trudeau. None of that language was referenced in Mr. Trump's post to Truth Social. And he said that he had an extremely productive meeting with Prime Minister Carney. Now, look, I'm under no illusions. We are not negotiating or dealing with a conventional US president, and we can take nothing for granted. And I do believe that Mr. Carney's tough talk will be valuable. But I was encouraged, first and foremost, as a Canadian citizen, to hear that it was a productive meeting and to hear that there was a respectful tone there.
Well, last week, Donald Trump came out and said that he would prefer to work with the Liberals because they're easier to deal with. Do you think that him now speaking highly of the phone conversation he had with Mark Carney is playing hand in hand with him almost wanting a Liberal government opposed to a Conservative one?
I'm not sure that Mr. Trump has a preference either way. I know he said that. There's been some speculation as to whether he may have been set up to make that remark to potentially actually help the conservatives who
Hmm.
don't want to be seen as tied to Trump. So I would say that Trump really has no preference at the end of the day. If anything, he does have a lot more in common with the conservative leader when it comes to public policy. So I wouldn't take those comments too seriously. At the end of the day, whomever wins this election is going to have to deal with the Trump administration. And I would rather have someone that's already established a respectful and working relationship like we've seen. And so I think that bodes well for Mr. Carney and his leadership ability to go toe to toe with the Trump administration.
Well, the Conservatives are citing new reporting that alleges that Mark Carney plagiarized parts of his PhD thesis. What should we make of this attack?
I think this is a hit job on Mr. Carney in the first week of this campaign, in which the Conservatives are trailing. The campaign is not going well. Some have suggested it's in free fall with sniping within conservative ranks. And I think that this accusation is an attempt to change the channel. Mr. Carney's doctoral supervisor from 1995 at Oxford University, Margaret Mayer, put out a statement saying that Mr. Carney's nearly 300-page thesis was in good academic standing. There was no plagiarism in that thesis, and that in fact it exceeded the academic expectations at the time and set him apart from his academic peers. So I think we need to move forward, stop attempting to character assassinate a candidate, and move on with this campaign and get down to the real issues.
Well, another attack that the Conservatives have pointed out is that Mark Carney is adopting many of their policy proposals on key policies like carbon tax and the capital gains tax hike. Are they right that he's simply copying and pasting their ideas?
I don't think that's a fair characterization, Theresa. Mr. Carney was clear throughout the 7 to 8 week leadership campaign earlier this year that he represented change when compared to Justin Trudeau. He was clear that he was going to scrap the consumer carbon tax, that he was going to reverse the changes to the capital gains inclusion rate. And so this is still a Liberal government, but it's under new leadership. And he's acknowledged the past failures of the government and really clearly articulated where he's different. And so I don't think it's a fair criticism.
Now, I have to ask about Paul Chang's comments about having his opponent taken to Chinese consulate for a bounty. Now, what's been your reaction to these comments?
I mean, these comments from this Liberal candidate, even though they were made as a joke, were absolutely unacceptable. They should never have been made. The Liberal Party of Canada, this government, Mark Carney, takes foreign interference and dealing with the Communist Party of China is not a joke. These are extremely serious issues, and so I'm glad that the candidate has put out an official apology and really taken those remarks back, because they're absolutely unacceptable and they have no place in a Canadian democracy and in an election campaign.
Now, he's tried to take back that comment and he's apologized, but should Mark Carney remove Paul Chang as a candidate for those remarks alone?
Look, at this point, he remains a candidate. I think we need to move forward. This election is about a whole host of issues. Yes, foreign interference is one of them, and the party takes it seriously, but we need to move forward. I understand why the Conservatives want to turn this from a one-day story into a one-week story, and they're bringing it up daily. And that's in their interest, because they have not had a successful first week. They have not been able to gain traction, and so they are jumping on this issue, these very unfortunate remarks, and trying to make political hay out of it. But the Liberal Party is not going to be distracted by that. We need to move forward. On April 2nd, more tariffs across the board are going to be imposed, and Mr. Carney will be speaking to that threat and what he intends to do to counter that threat. And so we need to keep focused on the issues. This is a consequential election campaign. It's arguably the most important election campaign in my life, and I'm looking forward and hopeful that it will remain above board, and the party leaders will stay focused like a laser on the issues that matter most to Canadians.
Well, Andrew, thank you so much for the time today.
Thank you, Theresa. Take care.